Hey mamas, this is Playfully Faithful Parenting, and I'm your host, Joy Wendling. I'm a seminary grad and children's and family minister turned stay-at-home mom to my 5 girls. Spiritual parenting is my calling, and it's my passion to help other mamas disciple their kids using the power of play and their own authentic daily walk with Christ. If you're a mama who wants to introduce your kids to Jesus and watch as the Holy Spirit transforms their lives, this is the place for you. I'm so glad you're here. So let's dive in and see how we can partner with God today. Hey mamas, welcome to Playfully Faithful Parenting. I'm your host, Joy, and today we are talking about seeing God and His order in play and in the stages of play, child development. I am an Enneagram 1 and did not know this until a couple years ago. Never had heard of the Enneagram. If you have not, I highly suggest you go check it out. It's totally fun and really helpful. At least it has been for my husband and I in learning more about ourselves and each other. And the ways, for me, my favorite thing is learning about ways that I'm made in God's image through my personality. And for example, once I started understanding the Enneagram and the type 1 better, when I read the creation story, I was just like, this is another way that I am made in God's image. So it says, and this is kind of where it started for me, like this. Ooh, hey, I like that. I resonate with that. I like that. It said on Genesis 1:12, the land produced vegetation, all sorts of seed-bearing plants and trees with seed-bearing fruit. Their seeds produced plants and trees of the same kind. And God saw that it was good. And evening passed and morning came, marking the 3rd day. So then we go down, and for me, I look at that and it sounds like super boring, and I used to just kind of skim right past that. But to me, there's so much order. It's logical, right? And God looked at something that He did that made sense, that was logical, that was in order, and He said it was good. And then and it's then in verse 25, God made all sorts of wild animals, livestock, and small animals, each able to produce offspring of the same kind. And God saw that it was good. I was like, yeah, logic, order, organization, yes. And just those little things, to me, I was just like, hey, God appreciates logic and appreciates things that make sense. And He appreciates organization and having this knowable outcome. Like an apple tree is always going to produce an apple tree. And, a rose bush is always going to reproduce rose bushes, like the seeds of the rose bush, and a penguin is always going to have a penguin. And there's order in that. And for me and my personality type, I was just like, oh, yes. And that was something I never would have even noticed until I started reading the Enneagram. But so just this order that God has created, He has put in us. And with children and with humans, it is the same. We have a development most of the time that is orderly. And it doesn't mean that it's the same for everyone. And there are circumstances that this is not always, development does not go as it was intended to. There's lots of things in the world don't always go the way that God intended them to. But in typical development, there are these 6 stages of play that kids go through. And we'll talk about some basic ages, but always know that if I say 3 months, it could be somewhere in the 2 to 4 month range. It's just, those are averages, not to be concerned if your kid doesn't hit it at exactly the right time. And so I just love that about God. And so these stages of play, I think, are really helpful for young kids. Now, the stages of play go up to about starting at 4, or ending about 4 years old. And then this other verse I just came to mind when I was preparing, and it says, "When I was a child, I spoke and thought and reasoned as a child. But when I grew up, I put away childish things." And not childish as in as a negative thing, but just things that are normally for children. And so it is normal. Like, kids think and speak and reason as children, and that's what they're supposed to do. And then we grow up, but we don't need to have our children grow up. And so we don't need to try to rush our children through these 6 stages play or into maturity. Kids are supposed to be immature, and then they are supposed to have close to 20 years of maturing. And I know I'm still maturing in some things. And so we have a lifetime to mature. And the years of childhood are so important. And God has created them for a purpose and with order and reason and logic, because that is who He is. He's not a chaotic God. And so I think a lot of parents of toddlers will talk about sharing, for example. And, my toddlers aren't sharing, or my 2-year-old, we went for a play date and they took toys and they wouldn't play with someone else. And, at daycare, the teacher says that he doesn't play with any of the other kids. Those things are normal. That is the way God has designed our kids and the developmental process. And so let's look. It's a researcher named Mildred Parton who identified these 6 stages of play. And again, every child will develop at their own rate. And so I'll give some estimate numbers, but don't hold them with a tight fist. Okay. So the first stage of play is only for the first 3 months or so of life. And this is called unoccupied play. And so this is when baby can just lay on their back and or on their tummy, and they just play with just their hands, their feet, and they're just discovering this body that God has given them and created them, and they're learning and they're exploring all their little parts, right? And as a new mom, I know I had, you've got these toys that say they're for 0 to 6 months. And so you throw all these toys around on the floor next to them, and you're shaking this one and you're shaking that one and trying to get baby to play with all these toys. That's not what baby wants. Baby wants unoccupied play. They just want to play and explore their body and how their bodies move. Then comes solitary play. And this is when children start to play with toys, but just play by themselves, and they don't really care to play with other people. And for some kids, siblings will have an effect on this. And some kids may want to play by themselves, but not be by themselves. And but this is, when you go for a play date and your baby or toddler is just playing by themselves with a toy, but it's not an interactive. They're content to play by. And this is not once you're out of the stage, you never go back to it. Like, once you are out of the stage, then you have the ability to continue to play in that style. So they kind of like layer on top of each other. Because how many of us want our kids to go back to being able to play by themselves? Like, your kid might turn 3 or 4 and you're like, oh, they used to play by themselves so well and now they don't. And it's just they've moved on to another stage of play. But with the right equipping and encouragement, your kids will be able to do that again. Okay. All hope is not lost. And once they leave a stage, it doesn't mean they can't do that type of play anymore. Next stage of play is the spectator or onlooker. And so this is kind of people watching for kids, for little kids. And this is usually about 2 years old. And it's the kid who just kind of wants to sit away from everybody else and just watch. I enjoy people watching, and kids do too. And kids learn so much in this stage of play. They learn a lot about social emotional skills and relationships. They learn about the social rules and social norms, and they learn different ways of using materials and exploring the world, because they may, only have played with blocks where they stack towers, and now they see across the room another kid is using blocks to build a city and driving their car around it. Why didn't I think about that? I can do that. And so your kids may look lonely, but it's probably you projecting loneliness onto your kids. They are learning and they are probably enjoying it as well. So just think of it as people watching and exploring with their eyes and researching. But it's such a rich type of play. There's just so much going on, and it looks like your kid is just sitting off to the side being lonely, but that's really not what's happening. Then sometime in the 2-year-old range, they will start what's called parallel play. And this is, I think, very common in preschools, like younger classes of preschools. And parents, will peek through the windows. And again, they're kind of worried because my kid isn't playing with someone. But it's when 2 kids or more are kind of near each other or playing side by side with the same thing, but not necessarily together. So both kids are building blocks, but they're not building one unified tower or city. Or both kids are playing with cars, but one is playing cars in, Lego World, and one kid is in Paw Patrol City, whatever. Oh man, I should know what the name of the town is in Paw Patrol, but I can't remember right now. But anyhow, so they're together, sitting beside each other, playing the same thing, but not working together. And this also, with art, I love parallel play with my kids and art. When I do a project or something a little bit more fine art and they do their kind of more, kid messy art, like playing, like when we do painting together, I like to, do something a little bit more intentional, more detailed, more focused, and they prefer to do what 5-year-olds do with paint, right? And 3-year-olds and whatnot. But I love parallel play with my kids. And so that's a great thing. This, I also think parallel play is a wonderful place to do reading together. Or with my daughter, my oldest daughter, we did some parallel Bible journaling. And so she had her Bible and her art supplies, and I had my Bible and my art supplies. And we did it. We worked on the same thing together, but not doing the same thing, so that I could have my quality and my own creativity, and she could have hers, but we were still playing together. And so that's just one benefit of parallel play that I love personally. Then there's associate play, and this is 3 to 4-year-olds, and this is when they may start to play together, but there's not a ton of cooperation, right? And so kids become more focused on the activity and may have a common goal, but they're not quite sure of how to get it done. So they're going to play Paw Patrol, but one of them is solving one problem while the other one is solving another problem. And there's some overlap, but it's not completely together, right? And then finally is cooperative play. And this is what we think kids are just supposed to start. But God doesn't have them just start coming out of the womb knowing how to cooperative play and share and play board games and follow rules of play. And those things come with time. And so cooperative play means there's a group goal. You can have rules. You can do board games, you sport, taking turns, sharing, negotiating. All of those skills don't come until cooperative play. And this does not even happen for most kids until they are at least 4. But we so often just expect our kids to start, as soon as they roll over, we want them to be able to share. And that's not how God designed them. And it's okay because Paul says, when I was a child, I spoke and thought and reasoned as a child. And so we know that it is okay for children to speak, think, and reason as they're supposed to be, as God created them. And He has a beautiful order that has purpose and intention, and they learn and they grow throughout those things. And so just wanted to share these with you because I think a lot of moms get really nervous for their kids' development and their social skills when their kids can't play a board game, or they can't play a game with other kids at the age of 2, when that's not the way God designed them. At 2, they're supposed to be watching others and learning and maybe doing some parallel play. And we just need to trust God's beautiful, intentional design. And so moms, I just hope that helps you today. I think it's a little bit different than a lot of episodes, but I just think that these stages of play are really important and can help us better understand our kids and play and our expectations of them. And just, by listening, learning these stages of play and watching our kids and seeing where they are, I see it as an act of faith and trust in God and the kids that He's created and the intentionality and the child development. He has a plan. He has a plan for their development. And so this week, for your turn to play, I really want you to be a student of your kid. Just watch their play. Be an onlooker, a spectator. What stage of play are they in? Or what stage do they enjoy most? Like I said, just because they're 4 and they can do cooperative play doesn't mean that that's what they like to do all the time. So just watch your kids playing, observe them with a student heart and with the mind of God has created them with this beautiful design, this logical, purposeful developmental stages. And let's see, just watch them. Where are they? Which stage do they enjoy most? And then think about how you can encourage them in that, okay? Because moms, this really, knowing these kinds of developmental things just really makes me marvel at God and what He's doing and how He has created them. And I want you to be able to do that as well. So there you have it, moms. On behalf of God, thank you for loving and playing with His kids and your kids, and have a great week. Bye. Well, mamas, that's it for today. Thanks for joining me on Playfully Faithful Parenting. I'd love to keep the conversation going over on the socials. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. If you felt encouraged or equipped by today's show, do me a favor and leave a review. I can't wait to hear your story. Till next week, keep playing and pointing those littles to Christ.